Welcome back to the Dark Reading News Desk here at RSA 2025. Terry Sweeney with Dark Reading, and joining us now is Patrick Coughlin, Senior Vice President of Global Technical Sales with Splunk. He's joined by his colleague Tony Iacobelli, Senior Manager of Splunk's Advanced Response Team, aka Splunk Art. Gentlemen, thank you and welcome.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, pleasure to be here.
Appreciate you doing the Dark Reading News Desk here. We are talking about threat detection and response and the future of those disciplines. Patrick, let's start with you. We are contractually obliged from the RSA terms of service to talk about artificial intelligence. Apologies in advance. Kick us off with some thoughts around how AI has really changed the rhythm, the pace, the mood, the energy inside the Security Operations Center.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some things that are the same, and there are some things that are very different. You know, with any kind of big tectonic technology shift.
Sure.
We saw this with the move to cloud. We saw this with the move to virtualization or mobile. A few things happen, and one of those things is it typically introduces some new element of surface area in the enterprise architecture. And I think we're seeing that with AI. As AI is moving into production and more workloads are moving through AI-enabled applications or pipelines, the Security Operations Center has a new thing that we have to think about securing, getting visibility into. And so that's a big topic of conversation. How do we build the same kind of digital resilience we would bring to cloud workloads, to AI workloads? I think the other way it's changing the conversation, and this is maybe a little bit of a different way, is how can AI help security operations do more, better, faster, stronger, more accurately? And you know, we're seeing that in terms of, you know, the hundreds and thousands of vendors that are here hawking their different sort of AI-enabled wares, right? And in the SOC where that shows up is how do we help incident responders and analysts detect faster or with more accuracy? How do we summarize incidents using large language models so that we don't have to spend so much time on the toil of investigation?
Sure.
And then, you know, I'd say the last area is really around, usually I like to have three things and I can't think of the third thing, so maybe we'll cut that part.
Well, Tony, just turning to you, how does that align with your perspective coming at this from the Splunk Art side?
Yeah, so for us, you know, it's a constant area of when there's something new. You know, Patrick mentioned expanding that surface of what we have to manage. And so part of it is, as incident responders, we're trying to figure out how can it benefit us in our response. And just today I was working an incident where there was some weird kind of account I've never heard of before. And all of the docs were in Italian. I was like, hey, what do I actually need to know? And it was like really good because I don't speak Italian. And so it was able to help summarize a lot of that for us. But then at the same time, too, as users are trying to go figure out what that may be, we're seeing people upload documents and other things that maybe they shouldn't be into AI. So it's just the same flavors of issues, but just new ways to do that sometimes.
Yeah. Iacobelli's not Italian?
It is, but
that's
my high school Italian teacher is very not happy with me right now.
I would say just one more thing on this that I think is coming up is you know, there's always these sort of unexpected downstream effects that hit the SOC, right? And so if you look at where AI is showing up elsewhere in the enterprise, right? So if you look at development teams that are deploying copilots so that they can accelerate the throughput of code development, and you see these enterprise CIOs or CTOs make large procurement decisions to bring AI into the enterprise, it can have this amazing sort of contained effect of accelerating code development. But then you kind of squeeze the balloon and it pops out somewhere else in the SOC, which means, oh my God, we may have 30% more code, but we also have 30% more vulnerabilities. And were we prepared for that? Were we thinking about that when we brought that AI-enabled capability into the enterprise? So it's a lot of having to keep track of not only what is the rest of the enterprise doing, but also how are we using AI within the SOC to make our lives better.
Well, can we dig in a little bit there? I'm really curious what you're hearing from customers about their I guess their AI pipe dreams. Like what do they imagine doing? Like what would they like to do? What pain points can this really address?
Well, I mean, you know, I think that the dream, the fanciful dream of cybersecurity that we've been talking about for, you know, the almost 20 years I've been coming to this conference is how do we eliminate the tier one analysts, you know, things like automation, And there's always that sort of dream, but the reality is and certainly at Splunk, we believe very much in a human in the loop approach, and that AI is going to be about augmentation. It's going to be about reducing toil. It's going to be about up leveling the individuals in the SOC and boosting their productivity. And so, I see a lot of the same message that rolled out, for example, 10 years ago when SOAR was hot in automation, and it's gotten this new energy with AI. And I think AI can do more to make automation smarter. It can help us get past if this then that to actually recommendations that can help speed detection and speed response, but ultimately it's going to help augment the analyst, not replace the analyst.
Excellent.
Yeah, that's exactly what we're seeing in our SOC and with our advanced responders too, where it's helping them make better decisions from the context of that data in less time. And so that's helping us focus on the things that actually matter that we need to go through. And instead of trying to maybe have to run a search somewhere or figure out what are all these other pieces in the steps, what might be a recommended course of action, or something, which really helps us accelerate and just make it a worse day to be an attacker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Tony, I'm curious from your side about how alert fatigue and tool sprawl are contributing to analyst burnout and reduced productivity. What are you noticing there? And does AI offer any hope or any possible solutions there?
Yeah, I think there is light at the end of the tunnel for a lot of the sprawling and analyst fatigue. And, we've seen different methodologies for helping kind of chop down at that problem. I've seen organizations and talked to people where they literally have spreadsheets of like, hey, when this alert fires, 99% of the time it's a false positive. So just mark it as a false positive. Well, there's still a reason somebody had that alert there, and you still need to look at that, but you just have so much time pressure in the queue in situations like that you can't. And so that's where, like, for example, when we went under a risk-based alerting transformation in our SOC, we were able to eliminate a lot of that time pressure. We're kind of looking for AI to help us with some of that as well, where instead of maybe being that initial filter of just, hey, which alert should be at the top of the queue and have an analyst look at first, it's how are we bringing more enrichment to that analyst and empowering their decisions to move through that incident more effectively. So I think, we'll probably see some more help in AI in terms of like initial prioritization.
Yeah.
But where we're really looking for a lot of the time savings is in the investigate and respond phases of dealing with whatever that alert may be, which will really help the analyst, double check what they're doing, recommend stuff like that.
Yeah. If you look at Forrester just came out with some data that if you look at sort of, from a macro level, where is time spent in the SOC? Without a doubt, like 40% of hours spent in the SOC is spent as sort of in that investigation phase, right? And if that's pulling together the disparate pieces of data that you need and getting yourself a complete picture is really what's consuming so much time. And that's where AI, I think, can help sort of bridge that faster, piece together the story faster so that we don't have to spend all the time putting the story together. We can focus on analyzing the story and making smarter decisions.
All right. Guys, real briefly, help us with some strategies or technologies that organizations can use to more proactively manage their security risks with what's the ongoing issue of limited staffs, limited budgets, and resources. Some closing thoughts there?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is, every time we talk about some new technology at a conference every year, but a lot of it goes back to basics too. So, you still have to know who in your organization can help you respond, how are you going to do that, and what tools can help you do that more efficiently. So that's where like SOAR platforms are still helping there. That's where some of the AI platforms are helping there too. And I think that can really help, but also just having a strategy of knowing if this is coming out, what am I going to do with it? What's going to make it better? What may make it worse? And how can we anticipate, those unintended consequences?
Yeah. And I think probably what I'm most excited about with AI amidst all the noise is what it can do to sort of bring down the barrier of entry to sophistication inside. So if you look at like what we're doing in Splunk, we have an AI assistant that allows you to ask in natural language questions of your data. Now, 10 years ago, 2 years ago, to ask some of these questions, you would have needed to be an SPL, which is our sort of query language, whiz, and it would have taken you years to sort of develop this capability to write these elegantly crafted SPL queries, right? And now we're saying with AI that you can just come in and ask the question that you want to ask without needing to know all of that SPL. And so that allows, somebody coming right out of college to all of a sudden start to flex the power of a very powerful tool like Splunk faster. And so if we can expose the capabilities of our technologies easier and faster to a new generation of cybersecurity professionals, then we make a bigger tent of people that can come in. And that to me is really exciting.
Patrick, Tony, thanks for these in the trenches illustrations and examples. They're really powerful. It's just also really good to have the guidance from people on the front lines. Thank you both for coming into the Dark Reading News Desk.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us.
We've been talking with Patrick Coughlin of Splunk and his colleague Tony Iacobelli with Splunk Art. This has been Terry Sweeney for the Dark Reading News Desk. Thanks for joining us for this segment. We'll see you next time.